Hello there and a warm welcome to Africa Tonight, a window to your continent. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Audrey Chimwanda. Let's take a look at your headlines. An election victory for President Uhuru Kenyatta. The IEBC has declared Kenyatta as the winner of the election rerun. Morning prayers turn into a deadly tragedy in Nigeria. A bomber blows himself up in a mosque, killing 5 people. And a court in France frees the brother of Burkina Faso leader Francois Compaoré. Blaise Compaoré's brother has been released, pending a request for his extradition over the 1998 killing of an investigative journalist. And of course, our top story for tonight, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta gets a second term in office. The Independent Electoral Body's Boundaries Commission declared President Uhuru Kenyatta as the winner of the election rerun. Here's a recap of what transpired.
98.18%.
Another election victory for President Uhuru Kenyatta. The president gets a second term in office after he bags a majority of votes in the election rerun boycotted by the main opposition. The results come 4 days after an election marred by violence and a low voter turnout. According to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Kenyatta got 7.5 million votes, or 98% of the votes.
Uhuru Kenyatta, 7,483,895. Now, these percentages are out of the votes, valid votes cast, 98.26%.
The rerun on Thursday came after the Supreme Court annulled the August 8th vote won by Kenyatta. The annulment, a first in Africa, led to weekly protests with the opposition calling for the reforms of the Electoral Commission. The main opposition leader refused to take part in the vote after his demands for reforms were not met. Kenyatta says his victory is a revalidation of the people's will.
As you all know, I have been here before. Hopefully this is for the last time. Today, I as a Kenyan celebrate our resilience as a nation, but I also celebrate our resilience and the resilience of our democracy, the resilience of our people, and also the resilience of our institutions.
His victory has been met with jubilations in the Kenyan town of Kikuyu. The town was named after one of Kenya's largest tribes, the Kikuyu, to which Kenyatta and his family belong. Meanwhile, in the town of Kisumu, scores of people took to the streets to protest the results. They are opposing the results, saying they did not vote.
In Kisumu, we did not vote. We did not vote. Nobody voted in Kisumu. And therefore, we are not going to accept the result. We are not going to accept the result.
The dramatic election has sparked fears of a repeat of the 2010 post-election violence. Bureau Report, ANN7.
So we're hoping to get an analyst to discuss the issue in Kenya further. We're still trying to get a hold of him. For now, though, we go to Somalia. Over the weekend, they were hit by another deadly bomb attack. It killed 29 people in a hotel in the capital, Mogadishu. The attack prompted the government to fire its police, intelligence officials, and it comes 2 weeks after the country witnessed another deadly attack, which claimed over 350 lives.
2 weeks after its deadliest attack, another explosion rocks the capital, Mogadishu. This time, visitors of a hotel in the capital were being targeted. At least 29 people lost their lives in a night-long siege. 5 attackers stormed the hotel building after a suicide car bomber detonated an explosives-laden vehicle at the entrance gate on Saturday afternoon.
wasiirka ayaa sidoo kale ka warbixiyay dhacdadii shalay ee hotel Nasablo 2 oo uu sheegay in ilaa 27 qof ay ku geeriyoodeen, dad badan oo dhaawacana ay jireen, dad badan oo hotelka ku xanibnaana ay ciidamada u gurmadeen geesiyaasha ah soona badbaadiyeen.
The attack comes as the country is still reeling from its deadliest attack. On the 14th of October, Mogadishu was hit by a massive truck bombing that killed 358 people. The rise in attacks have prompted the government to fire its police and intelligence chiefs.
golaha wasiirada ayaa dood dheer ka yeeshay tala soo jeedintaas wasiirka ugu dambeyntiina cod aqlabiyad leh u qaaday in xilalka laga qaado taliyaha booliiska Soomaaliyeed Cabdixakiin Daahir Saciid Saacid iyo agaasimaha nabad sugidda qaranka Cabdullaahi Maxamed Cali Sembelooshe.
The removal of the officials comes soon after the abrupt resignation of Somalia's defense minister and army chief on October the 12th. Both the officials quit without explanation just 2 days before the massive truck bombing. Although a new army chief was named the same day, General Abdi Jama Warsame, the defense portfolio remains vacant. Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack in a statement on its Andalas radio station. The group described the hotel as a place where apostate officials were staying. Al-Shabaab lost its foothold in Mogadishu in 2011, but has continued its fight, launching regular attacks on military, government, and civilian targets in the capital and elsewhere. Bureau Report, ANN7.
Over to Nigeria now. 5 people have been killed in a bomb attack in the northeast part of the country. Now, the bomber had pretended to be a worshipper. He blew himself up in a mosque during morning prayers.
Morning prayers turn into a deadly tragedy. A bomber, disguised as a worshipper, blew himself up in a mosque, killing worshippers and leaving scores of other people injured. At least 5 people lost their lives in the attack during early morning prayers. The worshippers are the latest to be targeted in the Boko Haram insurgency that began in 2009. The group often targets mosques that do not ascribe to its views. The early morning attack comes hours after a CJTF member manning a checkpoint in the Manu area of Maiduguri was killed and another injured when 2 women strapped with explosives blew themselves up. Authorities are calling for more security to be put in place to avoid such attacks.
The vulnerable areas that they should enhance the effectiveness of their surveillance, and they have to check what is within them, and they have to be more vigilant in terms of newcomers, people loitering around their business premises, mosques and other places. And I think this is high time for us to put because once you are quite aware that we noticed 3 suicide bombers just last 5 days, and now again.
Boko Haram is responsible for the deaths of over 20,000 people. Most of the group's victims are from northeast Nigeria. The insurgency has also forced 2.6 million people to flee their homes, creating one of the world's biggest humanitarian crises. Nigeria's military and the government maintain that Boko Haram is a spent force as a result of sustained counter-insurgency operations against the militants since early 2015. Deadlier attacks have dropped in recent weeks, which security sources attribute to renewed military offensives after the end of the rainy season in September. Bureau Report, ANN7.
And back home, members of the public carrying old South African national flags have stoked a storm in the country. The flags were seen in some centres as farmers and concerned citizens protested ongoing farm murders. Let's take a look. A protest over farm murders turns to controversy. Protesters take to the streets in various centres, including Cape Town, Stellenbosch and Pretoria. However, a storm erupts after some people are seen carrying the old South African flag.
We support every peaceful protest that seeks to advance any awareness, if not concern, of any people. However, what we will never associate ourselves with is any march that has got a posture that seeks to show ethnic, if not racial, undertones. It is not for the first time that we have these people grouping themselves and try to pretend as if it's about farmers.
A war of words erupts on Twitter. Police Minister Fikile Mbalula accuses Democratic Alliance leader Mmusi Maimane of approving of the old flag's use. However, Maimane hits back, saying, "You will do well to fight crime and murder, rather than insulting me by suggesting I support these flags or that regime." Civil rights group AfriForum airs its views on the issue.
I wouldn't make such a big issue of this. I don't say it's right. I am condemning it. But in the same way, I'm also saying that it was a very small minority. Today was a peaceful protest. The Minister of Police, instead of making this a political issue, and same with Natim Tetwa, making this a political issue, they should rather be focusing on the damage that's being done to our rural communities, including the plight of workers that are murdered by these criminals that murder our farmers too.
Statistics reveal a shocking 1,000 murders occurred in about 8,400 attacks on farms since 2001.
The main reason why I am here is because I want to go to the President and tell him that if we don't change the justice system in South Africa, violent crimes, whether it's in town, in a village, in a rural area, on a farm, is not being punished properly. It's not being punished enough, and that is what we want to do.
The Black First, Land First movement called on South Africans to boycott the protests. It said people should instead mourn the thousands of workers who are still slaves on the farms. With Moipane Ramatole in Pretoria, Bureau Report, ANN7. So Africa Tonight takes a very short break. When we do come back, we'll find out why the brother of the former president of Burkina Faso was detained in France. There's some more after the break. To stay with us. Welcome back to Africa Tonight, and thank you for staying with us. Now going back to our top story, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta getting a second term in office, with the IEBC Commission declaring that President Uhuru Kenyatta is the winner of the election rerun. Now joining me on Skype, finally, we've gotten a hold of Dr. Sipamandla Zondi. He's a Professor of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria. Professor, welcome to Africa Tonight. Professor, I do hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you very clearly.
Perfect. Welcome to Africa Tonight, Professor. Let's get right into it. Uhuru Kenyatta's legitimacy obviously depends upon a mandate from the Kenyan people. Do you think he managed to achieve that today in these rerun elections, given the low voter turnout?
It's a victory. It might mark an end to the squabbles we've seen in Kenya over the last couple of months, especially since the last election. But it might not earn it because of questions about the legitimacy of this outcome, legitimacy of the polls themselves, and the relatively low turnout. And so there's a lot more political work that must be done following this poll.
And a day before the election, we saw the Supreme Court being called upon by the opposition to decide whether the new polls were actually being held lawfully. The judges failed to form a quorum, as I'm sure you're well aware of. The petition was postponed. Do you think this further destroyed the election's credibility?
Of the Commission Board, and in respect of the procedures around the election process and all of those things, should raise questions around the legitimacy of this election, whoever wins in the end. And even in this particular case, running an election when a main contender has pulled out and questions have been raised, when the very members of the commission itself have said a lot more work needs to be done to boost confidence, need to change some senior officials that are tainted by the last ruling, does lead to a situation where we have an election for the sake of it, instead of having an election that is supposed to deepen the state of democracy in Kenya and its legitimacy in the eyes of the people of Kenya and the people of the world. It's unfortunate that they've decided to just push with this up to this point, and I hope that they would then use strong dialogue mechanisms in order to recover whatever lost legitimacy has arisen as a result of this.
Yeah, Professor, just looking on the other side of Raila Odinga, what could have been viewed as a strategic move from his part, going to the courts, switching to mass action instead to have people boycott this election, declaring that he will not contest in these elections, but also failing to submit the relevant information and form to the IBC so they can legally remove his name from the ballot paper. Do you think this was a blunder or it was a strategic on Odinga's part?
It was a pretty predictable move on the part of Raila Odinga, as it is with many frustrated leaders of opposition that are very strong in several other countries across the world. And the decision was on the basis, I think, that it could achieve two things for him. One is to delegitimize whatever election is now. It was to dent its legitimacy and credibility. The second one was to give Raila Odinga an opportunity to challenge this in court on the basis that certain things that the court had asked for had not been done, and as a result, in honor of the ruling of the court, he had pulled out. It was not just a political decision, but it was a decision in line with the rule of law. Can use all of that, but whether that will help, what could help him gain power or recover the situation, it remains to be seen.
Professor, I have to ask you this question before I let you go. We do know the presidential election, required a rerun. However, the members of parliament, the governors, senators of the opposition coalition that were elected during the August state election will stick to their elected posts. Most of them were from the opposition. How do you think this changes the dynamics of the whole opposition going forward?
The presidential election, the comparative election is very, very important in a situation where you have a presidential parliamentary system because the power of the president is significant. Now, and the contest was never over other levels of election, but it was over the presidential one. Now that the outcome has come out this way, the Uhuru side has come out a little stronger. They're believers of power. They can use this moment to unite the country and project an image of reconciliation and further isolate Odinga and the Orange movement. And they run a risk of experiencing what is called exhaustion, the fatigue among opposition voters who had hoped that this would be perhaps the last chance for the iconic figure Raila Odinga to get an opportunity to lead government.
Dr. Spamandla Zondi, thank you so much for your time on Africa Tonight. We certainly appreciate it. We have to leave it there. Dr. Spamandla Zondi is a professor of political sciences at the University of Pretoria, joining us via Skype, discussing how Uhuru Kenyatta has clinched once again the presidency of Kenya in a very controversial election rerun. Now, the exiled brother of Burkina Faso's ousted ex-president, Blaise Compaoré, has been freed in France a day after his arrest. He is accused of being involved in the murder of an investigative journalist, that's Norbert Zongo, back in 1998.
A court in France frees the brother of Burkina Faso leader, Blaise Compaoré. Blaise Compaoré's brother has been released pending a request for his extradition over the 1998 killing of an investigative journalist. He was arrested on Sunday in Paris after he arrived on a commercial flight from Ivory Coast.
À son arrivée à Roissy, on lui notifie un mandat d'arrêt international, avec donc des conséquences terribles en matière de liberté publique. On demande qu'il soit mis en prison. Eh bien aujourd'hui, la justice dit non. Donc le Burkina Faso, la justice burkinabé a été mise en échec par la justice française aujourd'hui.
Compaoré is wanted in Burkina Faso over the killings of a journalist Norbert Zongo and 3 companions whose charred bodies were found in a burnt-out car. Zongo's family have long accused Blaise Compaoré of having a hand in the killings, which triggered mass protest in Burkina Faso and drew international condemnation. Zongo, the crusading editor of El Independent newspaper, had written several hard-hitting articles about the misrule of the Comparo regime. At the time of his death, he was looking into the murder of Francois Comparo's chauffeur. His release has sparked outrage amongst rights activists.
C'est bien dommage, parce que là, on avait la chance de l'avoir et de vraiment de le remettre à la justice burkinabé pour être entendu. Et c'est dommage vraiment qu'il réparte que maintenant, qu'il sait que, parce qu'avant il pensait qu'il était intouchable, maintenant qu'il sait qu'il est touchable, qu'il prenne des précautions qu'on n'arrive plus du tout à l'avoir. C'est ça qui peut être dommage, parce que moi je crains ça. Je crains que maintenant, et là ça peut être une erreur grave des autorités françaises.
His brother Blaise Comparo was ousted in a popular revolt in October of 2014 after he tried to change the constitution to extend his 27-year grip on power. The brothers fled to Ivory Coast, where they obtained Ivorian nationality.
Now let's get to the more fun part of the show. Designers, musicians from across the African continent will converge in Lesotho's capital, Maseru, to attend the second edition of the FMMLS. The event aims to establish the city of Maseru as an epicenter of fashion and music nationally, as well as in the SADC region. It also seeks to provide the link to existing networks of trade and commerce locally and for export. Well, don't let me tell you about it. Joining me in the studio to tell us more about the event is Mapula Mufokeng Libona. That's the founder of the Fashion Meets Music events, and Nosipo Armstrong. She is the head of PR. Ladies, welcome to Africa Tonight.
Thank you.
Tell us about this initiative. Why Fashion Meets Music, particularly in Lesotho? Mapula, I understand you're the founder of this initiative?
Yes. I have a fashion boutique in Lesotho. I'm a South African born. I got married in Lesotho.
Oh, they take all the beautiful ladies there.
Okay. As I started off the business that side, I discovered the gap. I saw raw talent, and there wasn't any platforms for them. So I realized that they needed more exposure. In SA, we have a lot of that. We have your Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, SA Fashion Week. There isn't nothing like that in Lesotho. So Fashion Meets Music is done globally. So why not in Lesotho?
Right, so here we're talking about fashion designers.
Yes.
That's the gap that you're looking at, not being exposed enough in Lesotho.
No.
Okay, and Nosipo, how's the PR been going? Tell us about this event, the target market that you're hoping to achieve. Obviously, a lot of designers.
Yes.
You know, when you speak of music, when you speak of the arts, you can't take away fashion from that.
Definitely. I think the dynamic part about Fashion Meets Music is that it's not just the exposure of the local fashion designers in Lesotho, but we've also incorporated designers from other African countries such as Nigeria, Ghana, Zimbabwe, Swaziland. So it's an African theme that's coming to Lesotho. And the reason we did this was basically to show those local designers in Lesotho that, look, besides the fact that you come from Lesotho, you can play on a global scale. And we've basically used this opportunity to expose those young designers. And the music component, like you said earlier, it's the arts. So you can't have fashion without the collaboration of the music. And we are collaborating with some South African music artists as well. We've got Tibo Touch of Soul from Swaziland, as well as Nomuzi, who's going to be our main host for the show.
Okay, so this is a Pan-African event. It's not just about Lesotho or South Africa. I love that. Just mixing all the cultures. It's like a melting pot. That's what makes it so exciting.
Definitely.
Now, I understand, Mapula, this is not the first, the inaugural event. This happened last year. How have you improved going forward? And what have you learned, you know, from how you started and how you've evolved as a brand going forward?
Okay. The first lesson, it was the people didn't understand the concept quite well. So this year we decided to do monthly workshops with the designers, so that they can also learn what's expected from them as the designers. Last year, having them to showcase against other designers from African countries. Those ones are more established than them. So we saw a gap. So we had to fix that.
Yeah, and building their confidence so they understand that they can actually reach that that stage as well.
Yeah.
Nosipo, how can these designers get a hold of you? I understand you're obviously looking at the young designers that are coming up, and how do they become a part of this music fashion meets music Lesotho?
Well, they can connect to us via Facebook on our Fashion Meets Music Lesotho page. We've also got an Instagram page, Fashion Meets Music _Lesotho. And they can connect with us at the event itself.
Yeah.
The event is taking place on the 11th of November 2017. It's going to be at the Lehakwe Recreational Center. It starts at 6 p.m. And I think it's important for young designers to actually come to the event because remember, like we said, it's not just exposing them to exposing these young designers in Lesotho, but also the exposure on a larger scale in Africa.
Absolutely. I mean, I would have loved to see some of those designs here today if you had brought them for us. But look, this is not the last time we'll engage with you guys. Thank you so much for your time, your initiative that brings all these young designers from across the continent together. It's absolutely lovely. On the 11th of November 2017, Fashion Meets Music Lesotho will be happening. Well, we have to leave it there. This has been Africa Tonight. Thank you for watching the program. From myself, Audrey Chimanda, and the team behind the scenes, you have a good night.